Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. And today, of course, it's Monday evening and I've got Edwin with me once again. Hi Edwin, how are you going?
Oh, damn it, Martin. I got my new glasses on and I was sure you weren't going to recognize me this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very different from the other ones. I mean, they've got lenses in each one and, two earpieces. But I love the thought bubble coming out of your ear.
Yeah,
Huh?
well, it's the good. That's the thought bubble. It's a good. There's good ahead. There is good ahead for the property. Pundits and the like. I mean, the sentiment seems to be changing, Martin. We called it first, I think, a couple of months ago when we started watching the numbers very, very closely.
Yes. Well, I can tell you that I've had 5 different conversations with people covering actually several states. And in each case, the vendor decided to sell at 15% below their asking price.
Well, that's don't let on as to where that's happening, because then the prices will rise another 20%.
But it is interesting because these very same vendors were, a few weeks ago looking to hit, asking plus, right? There has really been a change in the weather.
Look, there has, and again, it goes back to you and I keep on saying, numbers don't lie, people do, and so did the mainstream spruikers and portals. So it's numbers are very important. They've always been very important in relation to supply and demand and what happens, and more so with a market that's emotionally charged, where I just flabbergasted and sometimes even gobsmacked when you've got such a huge change in sentiment, when in actual fact we have 1,000 more properties come on market, and the sentiment really goes goes downhill real rapidly. But there's 638 or 636 suburbs in Sydney. That's just a little, 1.2 or something, 1.1 or whatever, more properties in each suburb, and yet people, the sentiment changes, the narrative changes. So it's very emotionally charged. Likewise, when you take 1,000 off market, when listings come off market, the same thing happens, but on the other side of the coin, where people start panicking and they start buying prematurely. Like I've always said, just wait for the seasons, wait for the changes. Read the market, not only locally but also as you do, from an economic point of view, globally, which is very, very important.
Yeah, well, there's an important perspective. You have to come from the top level down to the local. And interestingly, those 15% moves weren't just in New South Wales, right? So that was somebody in New South Wales, yes. Somebody in Victoria, yes. But somebody in Queensland too. So, all down the East Coast, things are on the change. Now, you were quoting Warren Buffett about, when the tide goes out, you can see who's swimming naked. And I suspect that's a really good thing to bear in mind just now.
Well, that's right. It's we start to question: is this just is it a change in tide, or is it just a small undercurrent? In the next week or two, we'll know for sure. But I tend to think it's going to be a change in tide, in tide. But the tide, again, it's going to be seasonal because of everything else that we're going to talk about later in the show as well. So there's a great opportunity. If people want to move in, start looking very, very closely. If you've been focusing on the numbers, watch these numbers over the next week or two. Watch them rise. Watch to see what happens. Are the agents going to have a lazy Christmas break, or are they going to have a busy Christmas break? And what I mean by that is a lot more listings going to stay on market because they have to sell for various reasons, with the wax mandates and everything else, and the people losing their jobs, and for various reasons, personal and otherwise, medical and otherwise. So all these things are starting to play out, and people are starting to decide and determine whether they keep up, with keep the high mortgages, whether or not they move, where they move to, and what is it that they're going to need moving forward. So there's a lot of balls being juggled at the moment. But definitely, one thing for sure, Martin, and I'm totally convinced, is that even if the market shifts, as some of the reporters in the AFR and other mainstream media, have been saying, if the interest rates go up by 100 basis points, there's going to be a huge shift, and it could be possibly a 20-25% drop in prices. Well, as you and I have said, the most important thing is when you buy, make sure you buy with an upside so you can mitigate those losses should those economic and turbulent times come along, whether they're coming 6 months, in 12 months. And we are where we are now. And this is where the people that bought right are going to sit pretty, or a lot prettier than a lot of the other pundits that just jumped in, raced in ahead, paid 10, 15, 20% above the odds. But not only that, Martin, but also paid for inferior property to what they could have bought now, paid 10, 15% above for inferior property to what they could buy now. And particularly with what you've been saying, with the asking price and the drop in asking price and the achieved sale price, is 10-15% already in some areas, which we're already seeing it as well ourselves, in particular areas with the asking and what they're going for, and all the guides and what they're going for. And it certainly is a changing sentiment and a changing tide.
Absolutely. And talking about sentiment and tide, did you see the ABC 730 last week actually did a piece on building defects in New South Wales, and they had Chandler on, and they were saying 40% of high-rise have defects. Well, no new news there for those watching our show, huh?
No, look, definitely not. And for those that have even before we started doing this show, when we were chatting online and offline prior to that, many years prior to that as well, that what did we start? What did we bring out? What did we try to bring to the surface? I mean, even before I met you, Martin, like 8-10 years ago, when I was doing videos of these high-rise developments and the issues around the high-rise developments, the sinkholes, the way that they were being badly constructed, the bad engineering, and I was shut down. And I was shut down by the property pundits, that the ones that wanted to drive the narrative and support the construction industry, supported the dodgy development, and support all the underhanded deals. And unfortunately, I lost a lot of friends in the industry, because a lot of friends were involved with developers themselves, and I lost a lot of friends. And in my view, they were good weather, only well weather friends as well. Anyway, so good luck to them. But and I also got chased out of certain certain industry groups because of myself being vocal and putting videos out there, trying to warn the general public of what was to come, what was to happen. And where we are now, we've got the $1 million ghettos, and let's see what the state government do with those. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they're going to be doing a lot, because they're proposing to build more for this so-called bullshit affordable housing that they're trying to bring in line. But again, they're getting into bed with the wrong people, and they're taking the wrong approach to what should be not only affordable housing, but proper housing for the community of New South Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, people don't seem to be learning the lessons they should be learning. So it's really down to individuals to make sure that they do the due diligence on properties that they might be thinking of buying, and particularly high-rise. There's a lot of defects. But you've got some real on-the-ground stories, right? So in North Shore in particular, where prices have definitely started moving.
Well, these are where properties. We got 2-bedroom apartments in from Chatswood all the way up to Wahroonga, and we're selling for ridiculous amount of money. 1.2 up to $1.2 million for a 2-bedroom apartment in a badly built site. Construction site. So you've got a scenario. The first one is again in the North Shore. We won't go into too much detail as to where it is, but I shared this before, and I've shared it on Twitter. But now where we're at with this apartment is, if you recall, it got past that auction for at 1 million. The vendors didn't accept the 1 million. The guide was around 950, albeit. Then got passed in at the auction for 1 million. Then he went back on market for private treaty with a guide of 950. Now, because we know the agent very well, the highest offer they've had, a firm offer, a real offer, the highest they've had is 845,000, Martin. It's eye-watering stuff like this. But this is, we could say, wow, that's incredible. But what's more incredible is the poor bastards that bought in month prior or 2 months prior and paid the 1.150. The 3-bedroom apartment, so-called penthouse in this complex, got sold for 1.6 a week before the auction, where this one got passed in at 1 million. So, I mean, and this. So, what's it worth? What's it worth now? Is my question, and who bought it is obviously the second question.
Well, that's right, and watch this space. Expect further drifts down, but also, of course, there are now more mortgagee in possession properties also coming on the market. I've seen that in a few cases, and again, you've got another North Shore example too.
Well, that's right. This is a complex. Once again, we shared it on Twitter, and I spoke to you about it. It's an interesting scenario. This is what we've been saying, that the fallout for what's happening over in China with the building companies there, and obviously that's very, very much politicized, and it's you're one of those hot potatoes that you don't really want to the WeChat chatters are staying away from, because there's a lot more to it than just properties or property values and everything else. There's an political war going on in there. Anyway, we won't go into too much detail, but it's what we said a couple of months ago on the show. We said that watch this space, because it's not so much the effect of where people say Evergrande's going to collapse, going to fall over. Property values there in China are going to go through the floor and below and into the basement, blah blah blah, all that. But I said, it's not so much about what's going to happen there internally with their economic structure, because that's controlled anyway. But it's the effect that we're going to have, the roll-on effect that's going to be very important to take note of, is these investors in mainland China that are very highly speculative investors, that are high risk takers. There's a large portion of them that also invested in off-the-plan apartments here in Australia. So what you got to watch out for is the ones that have invested not so much in buying property over there in the Evergrande complexes and the like, because the majority of the buyers are first home buyers or first home buyers forever, you could say. That's why that's a lot more controlled. But these highly geared individuals are individuals that bought into the other offerings, other investment offerings that Evergrande have, which are more geared for financial offerings and the like. And that's the biggest concern, and that's where the government doesn't really give two hoots about. They don't care, and people can do their ass. But the people that are going to go backwards on that are the same people that took high risks and bought off-the-plan apartments here in Sydney. Now, so what we have from our WeChat chatterers, whether it be true or not or otherwise, I'll just take it at face value, the fact that in this complex, in the North Shore, there are 5 apartments that are mortgagee in possession by a syndicate that are based in mainland China. And these are going to go up for sale in just one complex. Now, there's a few others, individuals in other individual complexes between Chatswood and Hornsby, and between Linfield, St Ives, there's and a couple others. So you've got a situation where how many more of these are going to come on market, because not only because the people from China aren't paying the levies, because again the levies aren't being paid because they haven't been tenanted also here, and on top of that, they've also had special levies on various complexes, which these lot owners haven't met those special levies. So sooner than later, they're going to take. They're going to be. They're going to. The banks are going to move in, or the owners' corporations are going to force these sales. So in this particular case, it's a mortgagee in possession with five apartments in one complex.
Well, it's interesting, and you've raised a very interesting point to me, because I was talking to somebody the other day who was looking to buy into a high-rise apartment, and they were asking some questions about who else was living or owning in the apartment, and the management company didn't want to share any information at all about who else were actually living in the property, right? Who else were the owners? Now, they actually did a bit of due diligence independently and discovered that they had a huge gap in the fees, because so many of the people were actually offshore owners and they weren't paying the dues, and so they had this huge deficit. And so my little piece of advice tonight is ask for the finances, ask to see the finances for the management company, because it's really important to understand how ahead or behind the curve they are with regard to those payments.
Definitely, it's very, very important. I mean, that is just one of the one of the primary things that you have to look at, and also as we've pointed out in the show many times, is you also got to look at the historical records with regards to who built it, not so much who the developer was or is, but who built the bloody things. And in this case, Martin, in a case again, in a complex in the North Shore, I came across only on Saturday, where the development was built or it's completed now for a couple of years, but the developer is never been involved in the game before, is being in pharmaceuticals. Maybe they made a lot of money out of the wax and knew they were going to make a lot of money out of it and invested early, mate. Who knows? But talking to the agent, and I've got the receipts, I've got the agent on record telling me that the developer's first-time developer, and it's the only development. And from what I saw in walking around the complex, there's a lot of issues happening already. And when I spoke with one of the tenants in there, he also told me that there was a couple of years ago where there was heavy rains in the North Shore. They've got two basements. The lower basement was totally flooded out, and 3 cars had water right up to the roof line of the sedans down there. So that's how much water there was in there, because with all the water and all the rain that had come in, it had blown out the circuits, and the pumps just weren't working. So it just became a nice pool. So I guess you could look at the bright side and say they got an apartment with an indoor pool.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And interestingly, you're also getting now very interesting stories about auction clearance rates continuing to slide, right? So there's more stuff coming on, but less actually being sold at auctions. And you've actually got some evidence of that as well.
Well, that's right. Again, it's the stuff that I come across personally, and that's what I put out there. It's anecdotal, yes, but I come across this more and more, and there's only so much that we can share on the show. I do share more on Twitter, but look, this is the interesting part. Again, I know this property well, obviously because I was looking at it with one of our clients. And they were really expecting between 1.9 and 2 million in reality. Now we fell away. There were too many issues happening in the subfloor area of the property. We assessed what the cost would be, and it was just a little bit too much, given the hype around the time that we inspected it as well. So we just we felt there was going to be more coming on market, and sure enough, there's a hell of a lot more coming on market in that area anyway. So I reached out to the agent over the weekend, because the auction was on the Saturday, and this is what he sent me. He sold it for 1,745,000. Expectations were closer to the 2 million. But having said that, I can say that if the property had gone to an auction, the physical auction happened 4 or 5 weeks ago, I dare say, Martin, some some poor dummy would have paid, 1,950 for it because of the hype around at the time. Notwithstanding all the subfloor issues that this property had. Now, on that same tweet thread, we got one of our other followers, Peter, sent us a quick example of what he's seeing down in Melbourne as well, which is something that you're also been reporting on.
Yes, and it's just worth saying, I think people have occasionally said, well, you're only talking about Sydney property. Well, we don't. We do talk about property across the country, but because, of course, you are very much centred in and around Sydney, we use that as a bit of an archetypal point for the discussion. But I'm hearing similar stories in a number of other places too. So this is definitely a broad-based thing that's going on. But, of course, you've got the silver bullet solution, haven't you, for all this? Carrots.
That's right, Martin. Yeah, look, enough of the doom and gloom stuff, Martin. Let's talk about the good news. Look, the good news is that I planted those carrot seeds the right way, it would appear. You can see in the video, the viewers can see. So the shoots are coming. So we could be having a carrot and pumpkin soup at the end of the year, Martin. How's that? I'll invite you for some carrot and pumpkin soup.
Sounds good. Well, congratulations on getting the carrots to grow the right way. You don't want them with the with the points up, as it were. So that's good. And I understand you've also been doing some high-rise building as well.
Well, look, Martin, there was some leftover concrete from the from one of the works. I think it came over from Opal Tower or something. So, as I've been renovating the main house, the bathrooms, we poured early this morning. We poured the slabs, so we for the new bathrooms, and had some left over. And because I haven't been able to do any bricklaying because of the rains and the time, obviously no time availability, and the time when I do have the times on the Sunday it's just been absolutely pouring. There was some leftover concrete, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to build myself a high-rise veggie patch. So I've just laid the foundations for it.
Well, we've got the video of that too, and it certainly looks interesting. I think you should probably get Mr. Chandler to come and check it out, though.
No, you can't. No, he'll defect it, man. He'll defect it because I'm gonna look. I've got DA approval for 5 levels. But, I'm gonna push the extra basement and do a submission into council to go another level, so I can be on par with Opal Tower.
Very good. Now let's just switch over and talk about WeChat chatters a bit, because there are a lot of people saying, well, of course now the borders are going to reopen and now we're going to get all this flood of cheap labour coming back into Australia, etc., etc. The WeChat chats would suggest probably not. Well, look,
the thing, I guess, what we got to do is the WeChat chatters are not convinced that there's going to be a flood of students and tourists that are going to become ghost residents, or they're going to overstay their visas. And basically just work for a few years before they get caught or decide to go back home. They're not convinced that they're coming. The tradespeople, the Chinese family group tradespeople that I talk to week in, week out, they are absolutely, they're pulling their hair out because they can't get the work. And if anything, they are finding that the as we say, the little brothers and the little sisters that come over, as cheap labourers, are going back home. They're going back home because they're very fearful of the way that Australia is headed, with all the mandates that we got in place, and given the fact that a lot of them are running around with falsified papers anyway in documentation. So they've said to themselves, we've made enough money over the years, we're going to go back home. Now, you've also got to look at it logically and from the point of view of, if you recall, the WeChat chatters shared that the Chinese government are not issuing any more passports or documents of the like. So unless you've already got a passport on hand and it's valid, well, you're not going to be able to travel anyway. So if you're a new traveler and you're going to apply for a passport, you're not going to get one anyway. That's what they're saying. That's the first impediment. So that cuts out a lot of people that would otherwise would like to come. The other thing is it's become very expensive to then also obtain papers in order to get a visa, like a student visa, which a lot of these papers are doctored over there, and they're very costly. So it's getting very, very expensive, and the costs, with inflation, have also gone up, and the cost to travel and to get on a plane has also gone up. So the people that do all these things up there, they're called the snakeheads, is one term they use, or we would have the similar persona that we would use is perhaps a loan shark, but they're a little bit more vicious over there than the loan sharks that operate here in Sydney or Australia. So they are their price to get all this, get these things ready for these people to come over, has gone through the roof, and so that's why they're not confident that it's going to be the Chinese migrants or people that are going to come over in order to take up these jobs. So we're going the premier, my mate, that follows me on Twitter, is, I think they're going to get a rude shock when it really hits the halls of the government as to who's going to come over, because I think it's going to be real. The majority are really going to be people that aren't going to come over for long stay, and people that are definitely not going to be prepared to pay the amounts in rents that we got from the Chinese community. So I think the real issue here, or the real story that they sort of started speaking about it a couple of months ago, or about 6 weeks ago, if you recall, is the fact that there was already hundreds of thousands of permanent visa residents, holders that were coming to Australia, and they are people with money. That's who you've got to really be thinking about, not the so-called 2 million that are going to come over to take up the cheap jobs and going to come over here and work for cheap labor. They're not the ones that property buyers should be concerned about. It's the ones that are coming over that are well-educated people that are coming over that are specialists in the medical field, medical professions, accountants, and in the IT industry. And they are ready, willing, and able to come over, and potentially, or that has the potential, if the listing numbers drop again in the first quarter of 2022, for whatever reason, we could end up with a scenario that we just had over our winter period, where we saw numbers drop down to below 5,000 freestanding homes, and people were paying silly monies for what they could now get in terms of better quality and a much better price. So again, these are the shifting sands that are happening out there, and that that we pay attention to from what the WeChat chatters are telling us.
And just going on the numbers a bit more, they're higher again, aren't they?
Look, exactly. And this is why it's are we going to many that paid too much, bought a bit too early, and paid for dilapidated properties that they don't know themselves because the building reports didn't show them. Are they going to get caught with the pants down? Because the numbers are higher. We started this week with over 7,500 freestanding homes on market. Last week we started with just over 7,300 freestanding homes on market, and now we're starting higher again. And typically by now we should be tracking the other way, Martin. Yeah. Historically, we should be tracking the other way, but it seems, because of the delays, because of the issues that we've just walked out of as a state, we said that the numbers could also be delayed, and here we are, and potentially I think there may be a turnaround in the first week of December, and they'll start pulling back. But if they don't, then it's going to get really, really interesting. But on the other side, we've predominantly been looking at the freestanding home listings. But now what we've also noticed is that apartments on market have surpassed 2020's numbers.
Absolutely. And I think I've said on several previous shows, my intelligence suggests that there are a lot of investors sitting on these high-rise apartments trying to work out what to do, and not really seeing any improvement in terms of the financial performance of those investments even now. And now they're worried about whether they've missed out, and should they have listed them earlier, right? And so they're trying to get them on the market, quick, sharp, before things decay even more. So this will be really interesting. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the listings for apartments going up substantially over the next week or two.
Well, look, and that's when the sentiment will even go south, and people will start losing confidence, and they'll vendors potentially will start panicking and start that could be the opening of the dam. Just as I think about it, that property that apartment that we spoke of early in the show, the offer of 845, that was bought by the current owners in 2017 for 825.
Yeah, so add in the transaction costs, and they've gone particularly nowhere. Which is, I see this a lot when I sit with people and talk to them about what they did and what they're hoping to do, and it's a bit of a shock when they put all the numbers together. Unfortunately, and I hate to say, well, it amazes me how many people, particularly on the investment property side, don't do the numbers and don't really. They just have this sort of blind faith that properties will always go up in value, and unfortunately, doesn't necessarily follow, right?
No.
Now let's just move on quickly to some of the articles, and the one that I thought was quite not amusing exactly, but quite telling, was the fact that AFR is now talking about underquoting.
Look, they've been reading my posts for the last 10 years and watching my videos, and also since you and I have been speaking more and trying to be more vocal and reaching a greater audience with your audience and followers on DFA. They've started to take note. The funny thing is the ex-president of the REI New South Wales now wants to name and shame, wants the commissioner to name and shame the underquoting agents. My question to her is, why didn't she back me up when I was calling for that a few years back, and she and the board stood against me, and we won't go into too much detail as to what happened. Why didn't the CEO back me up when I was bringing these points up on LinkedIn, when I used to be a bit more vocal on LinkedIn? I haven't checked LinkedIn for about 4 years now, or 3 years. When I was writing on LinkedIn and calling underquoters out then, why'd they shut it down? And I can tell you why, Martin. It's because the majority of these underquoters are members of the REI New South Wales. So then I thought, hold on a minute, the ex-president of the REI New South Wales is calling on the commissioner to name and shame the underquoters. I think she's either had a fallout with the REI New South Wales herself, which I very much doubt it, or she could be in the market to buy herself, and she's buying from her opposition, and she's now she's getting hit with the same cricket bat that every other buyer has been hit in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. I still get a lot of feedback about underquoting from various of our followers, and it is endemic, and it isn't just in New South Wales. It's in other places too. But you're right; it is really supported and endorsed by the very people that should be calling it out.
Yeah, and look, we know, we've got the receipts. One of our associates, not my associates in Ribbon Property, but and when I say associates, the greater community that I talk with and get together with, in the industry, they've got the training manuals for one of the main franchises that actually teaches how to price a property low so that it can sell at auction. So we've got the receipts. We know, and this is what I've been saying. Yeah, this underquoting, this was birthed in the halls and in the offices of the REIs, and the biggest, second to that could be on par is the REIV. And the REIV just seem to want to blame the vendors, and the REI New South Wales just wanted to put the head in stick the head in the sand and pretend nothing's happening, because it's their members that have been pushing this for decades.
Absolutely. Well, as we have said before, underquoting is real. It does happen. It can actually, really sour the pitch when it comes to, fair prices, and people should be cautious. But here's another one that you found as well. I can't believe this, right? I think I should go and start dishwashing.
Look, no, $90 an hour. It is tempting, Martin. It is tempting. Dusty is just not old enough to go out just yet. I said, look, she was out. She was gone. She wanted to really go out there and start washing those dishes, scrub those pans we are saving up for Christmas. But look, $90 an hour. The first and second year, let's say, junior associates in a law firm don't make that kind of money. They're still on about $45 or $55, and they get work to the bone. But look, good luck to them. Good luck to them. On the other side of the coin is good luck to the people. I did 3 months of washing dishes in Canberra when I was in college there in my younger days, it was when I was down there. It was in winter on top of that, and my VW didn't have a heater, so it was I wish. I think I was only getting $9 an hour.
But this is an interesting signal, right? Talking about the inflationary pressures, right? Because in certain sectors of the economy, it's quite clear that businesses are having to pay a lot more than previously just to get basic workers, and there is a shortage clearly. That's going to flow through. That's going to flow through to higher prices, and coming right back to the RBA's view of the world, which is inflation is transitory, it's going to disappear. Well, if we start seeing more people essentially getting those sorts of wage rewards, that's going to be an endemic sort of inflation that's going to flow through, and it's going to put the RBA up against it in terms of actually being able to deal with anything other than having to put rates up. And if they put rates up, of course, then all sorts of other things follow.
Yeah, put rates up, and that's a perfect storm. Again, if the RBA moves, the banks moving independently. If the RBA moves, the banks move again. Numbers on market increase, and that's it. It's just a wait and see. The other with what I've been finding, and we've been sharing with you and I've been sharing on our shows, is how you go to these restaurants, and the steaks seem to be this shrinkflation is just so evident. It's just so funny. It's just even, I mean, there were some real classy restaurants where you go there and the plate's almost as big as the table, albeit, and you get these little portions, and it's not about the portion, it's about the taste apparently, and it's about who throws the salt on your steak. But now you don't even need those big plates, Martin. You just need a normal plate, because the size of the steak has shrunk so much that look, the saving on, I guess, the price of the dishwashers, the people with washing dishes, has gone up. But look, you got to look at it the other side of that coin as well, Martin. The right side, the bright side of that is that the plates are a lot smaller, so maybe they're not spending as much time in the kitchen washing the dishes.
Well, it could be, or perhaps it's part of a drive to reduce the overweightness of many people in Australia, right? I mean, this nouveau cuisine stuff you're talking about, where you get one or two little squiddy things on the plate. I've been on a few of those, and I come out as hungry as when I went in. And to my mind, that's not a feed.
No, no, not at all. After you go to these restaurants and you fork out, for a party of two, or even a party of four, and you're forking out $500, $600, $700, with a few drinks. After that, you all feel like going down the road and going to see if there's a shop that's selling meat pies, or hot dogs or something.
I know. It's quite weird. Now, the last article tonight is actually a very serious one, right? Because unfortunately, there's been another case of a fire in a property and people dying as a result of it. And, it is surprising, bearing in mind that the building regs are very clear on the fact that there should be smoke alarms in buildings. So how come this happened?
Look, I haven't gone into detail, don't know the background, and obviously this is still under investigation. But so I'm not going to comment directly about this article, but I just want to bring to light a couple of things that I've learned in my years of property management, and I've learned from experts in this area. And also, I did follow a previous incident where where a young an infant got burned alive also in Doonside. I know the background of that. Again, in that case, there was a lot of complacency from the property management team, from the office that was managing the property. So there was a lot of issues. But with this, just highlighted when I read this article, it just highlighted again what an expert in fire alarms told me about 4 or 5 years back when I was still involved with property management, and that's this, Martin. He said, when you look at a when you look at a smoke alarm, the untrained eye sees it, goes to Bunnings, picks up a smoke alarm, and just because it reads smoke alarm, or in the section where the smoke alarms, picks it up and just takes it home, or takes it to the property that they're renting out, and places it on in the roof, in the ceiling, and then as long as they think that they change the battery, everything's hunky dory. They change the battery every 6 months, or when it's required. They think it's on or before 6 months, and they think everything's hunky dory. However, he said, what if I told you that 50% of the smoke alarms that are out there in properties detect smoke, right? And 50% detect heat but don't detect smoke.
Wow.
So now I found that out after there was an incident with a rubbish bin area in an apartment block in Penrith that we were managing 2 properties in there. We got called in because obviously the tenants were there and in those units. So we went out there to assess the situation, whether or not the smoke that was bellowing out of the rubbish bin area had affected those apartments. And our tenants in those units told us that they slept through the whole thing. They weren't affected. They were further away from where the fire was, but most of the tenants in that complex actually slept through that incident, right? And they could have. And when you looked at one of the apartments, I recall there was soot everywhere. I mean, it's a wonder the tenant was still alive. Now it had a smoke alarm. We just took over this management, but after that, so that would have been about, let's say, about 8 years ago, to be precise. About 8 years ago, and that is after that. I said to my property management team, we're calling all our landlords, and we're going to get all our landlords to make sure that they not only fit battery operated smoke detectors or smoke alarms, but they're going to be hardwired. There's no other option. And if our landlords did not want to go with hardwired, spend that extra couple $100, we were very reluctant to take on that management, because that is when I learned that lesson. as to the difference between smoke alarms, and it was it was rather an eye opener, Martin. So in this situation, when you read the article, and they basically they were suffocated. The twins suffocated from the toxins that were belling out of the from the piano. So allegedly. So we'll know more later on. So the important thing is in this scenario is that if you're a property manager, or in your own home, if you've got a battery operated smoke alarm, call an electrician and get it hardwired, because you as an individual, like myself, you're not going to know what's what unless you really read the fine and the very detailed print. But I've just got to, I took that advice on board, and I've, and I've been very, very adamant about the way that I treat smoke alarms ever since.
And I will make the point, I don't know whether it's true everywhere, but quite often when the alarms are hardwired, so it triggers off perhaps a major alarm as well, you still actually have a battery in the unit.
That's correct.
And that means that even if it's hardwired, you have to remember to change the batteries.
Yeah, it'll beep. They'll beep. They'll let you know.
Yeah.
So you've got a backup. But you know that when those are installed, you know that they do both. Without going into the ins and outs. And so once I sat down with that individual, then like I said, I took it on board, and it's not that costly of an exercise to do. And we have also encouraged in complexes that when I used to be very much involved with property management, we encourage the strata companies to talk to the rest of the individuals, in small blocks where we manage the few properties as well. We attended the owners corporation meeting and encouraged the entire unit, particularly the old units, to get them hardwired.
Absolutely. Very good advice. And that takes us right into the tip of the week, Edwin, doesn't it?
Well, look, that's right. And the tip of the week is, again, it's very, very practical. And also because from not only from this story, but a couple of weeks ago, I had the electricians up at the property. They're rewiring the three dwellings on the property, and in the main house, they're literally going, that's going to be fully rewired, and because look, the house was built in 1942 or thereabouts, and in time, people have got this tendency with older houses, and they don't have to be that old. That could have been built in the 70s or 80s. You still got the old ceramic fuses, but what a lot of people do is they add on switches, they add on power points. There's all these add-ons that the fuse box, the electrical fuse box can't cope with all this overload, and so you've got the power boards are just running so hot, and the wiring is running so hot as well, that over the decades, like in our property, as the electricians were pulling the old wiring out, and mind you, it was being used prior to to date, that had been used, and it was literally just crumbling away as they were pulling it out. So my advice to people, my tip for people is, if you're managing a property, don't be foolish. Don't take the cheap route of this cheap and nasty smoke alarms. Get it hardwired. You don't want any of this, even if you think that your property manager's changing the batteries, or you're getting it changed every 6 months, or by the regulations, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. Really, you don't need any of this. You don't need any of these headaches on your conscience, or you don't need any of this grief on your conscience. And if you're in your own property, do the same. If you've just been running battery operated, look, for a few $100s, $300-400, get it get the alarms hardwired. You got your backup systems there, and at the same time, check your fuse boxes, check your the whole circuit, because it was an older home that's being added onto, from what I see over and over again, you see these additions and you see these makeshift additions, and if the building side of things is makeshift and they've sort of tacked things on here and there, you start to wonder and think, how many corners people cut with the stuff that you don't see that's behind the gyprock and the fibro and the like, and it's live wire. You can't see it coming at you when it bites you. And therefore it's more dangerous. So get it checked out, and before things get too hot and aircon units start being ramped up left, right, and center, and you start using more power. That's the tip.
No, I think it's very important, Edwin. And I will just have one other thought, because I quite often find that people don't, when they're looking to buy a property, they don't get an electrician to come and do a quick inspection of the wiring of a property. And I actually think that's quite an important thing to do, not least because we know that some time ago there were some very cheap materials imported, right? And that included different types of wiring that degrade very quickly. And so even properties that might be, just a few years old could potentially have materials that are actually substandard. Now, when you're buying a property and considering how much grief can be created when in fact, wiring fails, it arcs, it could cause a fire, all those things, or it could just keep blowing the fuses. It's really important to get it checked. So that would be on my checklist, along with, all the other things to check, right? Check the power as well.
Definitely. And look, we could go on with regards to this. In 2014, I'd posted out an article with regards to the cheap imports, and I started talking about how there was asbestos found in a lot of the materials that we were importing back then, 2013, 2014. A lot of it was around the gyprock. But the ABC from memory brought out an article in 2015, or the ABC and the AFR as well, I believe. They brought out articles in relation to the insulation in the wiring that was contaminated with asbestos. So again, you've got all these things. So we're not safe if it's unless you check it, as you said, Martin. So you got to check it out, and this is where a lot of these new apartments that have been built by your one time or one only time developers, or the first developments, that they're going to, in a lot of the cases, they're going to go cheap and nasty. And this is why it's very, very important to do your checks and balances and your due diligence on the way it was built and the way it was constructed, to see what they used. A lot of the power points and a lot of the switches that have been used over the last 10 years. I mean, they're so flimsy and so brittle. They look cheap and nasty. You can. It doesn't take much to damage them. And this is the eye for detail that you need to look at as well, to determine whether or not all the other stuff that you don't see, that you're not able to see, like the foundations and what's behind the walls, what's in between the walls and everything else, what type of insulation and what's in the roof cavity, in areas where the building and pest inspector won't travel, what's in there. You soon get an idea. If you see cheap and nasty materials around, if they're so evident, what other corners have been cut?
Yeah, exactly the right question. And as we keep saying, it's much, much better to do the due diligence on the way in if you're thinking of buying, rather than trying to fix it up afterwards, right? Because some of the fix-ups can be really, really expensive. And indeed, it can lead to accidents and fires and things if it's not handled correctly. So it is worth it, and not only from the financial perspective, but also from safety and from peace of mind too. I think it's a very important message, Edwin.
Well, definitely, and something that we just keep on sharing posts and tips, and again, it's just to have that peace of mind and the comfort. And after all, I think there are more and more suburbs that the mainstream are talking about the average property being worth $1 million. And when you look at these properties, there's they may be worth $1 million, but you look at them and you sort of think, shit, there's another 200,000 I've got to spend on this to make it livable. So more of a reason why you've got to check things out more thoroughly.
Absolutely. No, great advice. Edwin, well, thanks as always. Always good to catch up on for our Monday rant. And of course, we'll have another chat next week. And I'll be following you on Twitter meantime to see what else you're up to.
Oh, definitely. Dusty's up to mischief, and Evan's just got a bit of a cat flu, so she won't get up too much. But yeah, I'll definitely get up to some mischief. So yeah, follow me on Twitter. follow my posts.
Right. Thanks, Edwin. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.